Welcome back, Ben.
Here we are, back for another one. The table is a little lighter this time. We're going to look at two specific whiskies here. The Bushmills and the Yellow Spot. Where do these two come from? What is their story?
The reason I picked these two bottles is because there's a lot that we can learn by just looking at only two bottles. So one of the questions that I get often is, what is the difference between a blended whiskey and a single malt? Which we've dealt with in our last episode, or what is the difference between a bourbon and a single malt? Well, what these guys are doing, single malt, is that they use one kind of whiskey, so they're not blending from thousands of different manufacturers. They make the same whiskey in many barrels, and then they mix those barrels all together to get consistency. So you find that your flavors in single malts are far more consistent from batch to batch than blended whiskies.
Does that then mean that your price point jumps up because you select in what you are putting in the bottle?
Price point on single malts will usually be a little bit higher, and that's got just to do with basic economics. First of all, for a single malt, there are additional processes that must be undertaken to produce the whiskey that are quite costly. What they do is they actually take the barley and they sprout it. You get those tiny little tails. It's like the seed is just about to grow. And what they do is they get the conditions just right, the temperature just right, the humidity just right, and as they start to malt, or they start to grow the little tails, they are then added into the mash bill, and then they start producing the base mash, which is then distilled into spirits. A lot of whiskies obviously don't do that, so some whiskies like grain whiskies and that kind of thing, they won't be malting their barley, and some whiskies in fact don't use any barley at all, or if they do, it might be very small quantities of barley. This is an incredibly interesting whiskey because these guys are using a very similar process to the single malt guys, but they're not malting the barley. They don't allow it to grow that little tail, and it does two things. It won't have nearly as much of a flavor punch. It's not going to have as much depth in flavor and as much of a nose and as much of a flavor profile, in my opinion, than some single malt whiskies that are at a similar sort of level. What this does is it brings out another whole range of flavors. This is called a pot stilled, an Irish pot stilled whiskey. So we've spoken about, first of all, the fact that they don't malt the barley that goes in. They don't allow it to grow that little tail. The second thing that they do with this is they use a much smaller production method. So Scotch whiskies, a lot of the Irish whiskies, a lot of the Japanese whiskies, they use enormous mass-produced production methods which were perfected by the Scots. Sometime in the early 20th century, if I'm not mistaken. And a lot of the Irish producers turned around and said, we will not produce in higher volumes using the new technology still operations. They decided to continue making in much smaller copper stilled processes. So instead of using large stainless steel processes, they use much smaller, more artisan processes to produce this particular bottle. And you get an unbelievable mouthfeel. It's creamy inside the mouth, almost like licking a good vanilla ice cream, and it has that vanilla flavor as well. It has an oiliness inside the mouthfeel. Right up front, you get some similar flavors, like you're going to get a vanilla, and you're going to get flavors of cut grass, maybe cut hay, up front in both of them. But the after palate in these two is completely different. If there is one whiskey in the world that I would recommend to somebody to go out, find, buy and try, it is an Irish copper stilled whiskey. They are quite expensive. I'm not going to lie, they are made in very small batches. They're quite hard to get. This is called a yellow spot. You'll get a green spot, you do a blue spot, and each spot, historically, they used to paint a spot on the barrels when they were aging in the warehouse to denote how old they were. And if it was 12 years old, it got a yellow spot. So they continued in the tradition of that naming. My opinion, it is the most unrecognized, most undervalued, best whiskey that you can get in the world. I forgot to bring one of the others here to show you, but there's another one called Powers 12. If you can get hold of it, it's available in South Africa. Both of these are around 900, 1,100 Rand a bottle. So they are extremely expensive. But this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to understand how the mash bill and the production and malting process, even though slightly similar, one or two changes just vastly
Completely flips the script.
completely flips the script.
Okay.
Let's have a go at these two. Let's try the Bushmills there, Ben.
Fantastic.
Cheers. Now, it's got very similar nose up front to the Scottish whiskies, and what the Japanese did, for example, is they sent people to Scotland at the turn of the 19th century, I'm not sure, and they actually copied Scottish whiskey making in its entirety, down to the last tea, and then they imported that knowledge back to Japan. And they make in much smaller quantities. So Japanese whiskey, we're going to have a look at one quite soon, is some of the most highly rated, sought after whiskies in the world. But again, it comes down to economics. Many of their flavor profiles and tastes are the same as the Irish and the Scotch. Much smaller productions, which pushes the prices up enormously. And that's similar to this. Smaller productions equals on average higher price. But let me tell you, if you can get your hands on a copper pot, it's worth it. Let's try the Bushmills, Ben.
Let's give that a whirl.
There's that cut grass and the hay.
Grassiness, yeah. Straight off the back.
Straight up
grassiness
front.
there.
And then again, this is a good everyday drinking single malt, very popular, very pronounced flavor of barley. You definitely get that in there. You get the wood from the barrel. This doesn't have a particularly complex range of flavors, but it's deep and rich. You get that a slight amount of fruitiness up front, and then everything at the back is a little bit smoky, a little bit peppery.
Yeah, it does come back a little bit harsher than some of the smoother ones we've tasted in the past. But again, the grassy smell that you get at the beginning, you then taste as well.
That harshness that you are getting, it's a 10-year-old whiskey, this, so it's fairly well mellowed. But remember when I said when they malt the barley, it gives an extra punch of flavor, a little bit of extra depth and range, a richness to it. And
that's what that is.
It's with the richness, with that deepness, comes an extra little hit of alcohol. And I don't like necessarily that big hit of alcohol that you get at the back. Some people do enjoy it. You're going to find that with a younger whiskey. This is available widely in the South African market. It's one of the most highly produced whiskies in the world. And what happens is people say, I drink Irish whiskey, and what do every time they buy Jameson's?
That's the go-to, yeah.
Jameson's, it's like a Toyota Corolla. You can rely on it every time. It's never going to let you down. It's good value for money. People like them. It's as boring as hell, Ben. It's as boring as hell. Do yourself a favor. We get some of the best Irish whiskies available in the whole world, right here on the South African market at very reasonable global prices. So next time you're heading out to the bottle store, instead of picking up the same bottle that you've done 1,000 times, Jameson's or Tullamore or whatever it is, try Bushmills. It is absolutely fantastic. It'll completely change your palate. It is a wonderful whiskey to drink neat. I highly recommend just sipping this neat at kind of room temperature. If you're a beginner, as I say, you can always put a drop of water or a chip of ice. It's a beautiful bottle, it's a beautiful product, it comes from Ireland, it's something different, and I know many people whose Bushmills, it's their first pick. They do one that's slightly cheaper than this called Black Bush, made by the same people. It's a little bit similar to Johnny Walker 12, you can try that if you want, but if it's in your budget, give this a shot.
Okay, onto the yellow spot. This one is a 12-year. So
yes.
A little bit more aged there.
Yeah, it's obviously more aged, and that will obviously make it a little bit more mellow. On average, it'll pull some of the harshness out of the flavor profile, and it'll also obviously impart some complexity. Like with this, immediately it's a much gentler flavor on the nose. So with this, when you smell it, you get the same hit on the nose right up front as you get when it comes off the back of the palate. It's that same spicy, kicky pepperiness, kind of smells a little bit like a farmyard, and it's really present, and you can feel it. And some people deeply enjoy that. I might find that some beginner drinkers or less experienced drinkers may not want that punchy flavor profile, maybe something a little bit milder.
Smoother, yeah, lighter going, yeah.
But that carries through. Now in this, we get some of the same stuff up front. Vanilla is always going to be very present in these kinds of bottlings. It's a very popular flavor profile that is in whiskey that manufacturers like to carry through. People like it, and so it's popular. But after the whiskey, you're getting hits of red fruit, you're getting a little bit of apple on the palate, you're getting a little bit of nutmeg, you're getting a bit of clove. And at the end, I can only explain it as a creamy creme brulee feel that leaves the mouth. So the same way that we had one or two whiskies that left a little bit of a frangelico nut liqueur flavor like the Chivas Regal, this leaves a creme brulee, a creamy creme brulee flavor. I can only explain it as burnt sugar, a creamy ice cream, and an oily mouthfeel. Let's give that a shot.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you've set up
I've set the bar high.
a dessert of sorts. So let's see if it sinks the same way.
Oh, that is just fantastic. I mean, wow. The mouthfeel on a copper pot Irish whiskey is different to anything else available in the world. There's simply nothing like it. I can't explain. It's oily.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It is oily, slightly heavier almost, I guess. The creaminess that you spoke about on the tongue. Also, not as harsh as the Bushmills.
Definitely not as harsh. That creaminess at the end of the palate, it overrides that peppery kick that you get in the younger whiskey that's been malted.
Yeah, but you get the same flavor profile from the beginning all the way through to the end. So that's, yeah.
Now, I always say to people, you drink your spirits as you like them. If you want to mix it in a cocktail or a mixer, if you want to put ice, if you want to put water. I'm not one of those snobs that goes around dictating how you should enjoy your alcohol. I personally sip most of mine neat. My palate's kind of adjusted to that for now. But if there's one whiskey that I almost want to say to you, it would kind of be somewhat criminal to mix with anything, even ice or water would be something like this, because it is so smooth. It has such a pleasant flavor. It has almost no harshness in it. And people don't know about them. So if I'm trying to show off to a friend, comes around to my house and he says, what have you got that's good? I pull out something like this. I pull out a Powers 12 or something similar. I've got Redbreast on the shelf, all three Irish copper pot whiskies. And every time I do that, I blow people's minds because they've never had a whiskey that goes into the mouth like cream and oil. It's a great learning opportunity, this, because there's just so much different between these two bottles.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely different on the spectrum of what's available out there. And again, like you said, it's a bit of a treat. So yeah, glad. I don't know how long this bottle will last after the hype and actually delivering. So let's see.
I've had this bottle a while, so this has been in my personal collection for quite a while. You can see that there's not much left of it. And I can tell you right now that when this thing's gone, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find another bottle, even though it hurts a lot. They are not cheap. This is really a once in a lifetime. If you get a chance, or you can buy a bottle, or you really want to treat somebody that you love to just the most fantastic gift. I got this particular bottle at Norman Goodfellows in Lenovo. At the time it was under 1,000 rand, so it's actually really reasonable. You'd pay about 1.5 if you bought it at the distillery in Ireland. So this is fantastic. I highly recommend both of these. You absolutely cannot go wrong with either of them. Just remember, prices are different, and you might want to think about who's going to be drinking it. Do they want something a little bit punchier with a little bit more flavor, like my granddad would, or would they like something a little bit smoother, like my mom?
Fantastic, yeah. And so we draw to the end of a really special episode. If you've missed other episodes, please go back, have a look. We've sampled a bunch of different spirits. We've tackled some PT, some not so much, some entry levels, and we've also tackled a bit of tequila. So go have a watch, explore the different items that are available, and as always, make sure that you're drinking responsibly. If you are traveling, that you're Ubering, or you've got somebody to drive you around so that you are enjoying the evening without any troubles.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. We will be having a look at some stuff from Japan next time, so join us. Thanks, and cheers for now.